My name is Lars, and I started working as a photographer in 2001. Today, I don't call myself a photojournalist or photographer. I call myself a visual storyteller because I use photography, videography, design to tell stories. So I think visual storyteller is a better way to tell what I'm doing. I used to work as a photographer in a newspaper, or actually in 2 newspapers for 15 years. Now I'm working with communication, so I also do text. I love to tell stories about people, and what I'm going to tell you today is about the people in this area and how I got to know them. And this has taken me like almost 10 years. And the story itself, it starts back in 2005. I was working in the small newspaper in Stavanger in Norway, and we had this huge newspaper. They had like 10 times the amount of journalists and photographers than us. They traveled all over Norway, all over the world, and made stories. And I was a little bit like, I want to do that, but the small newspaper, we couldn't afford it. But in October 2005, this article was printed in their magazine. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. But I was like, what is this? It's like 90% a cornfield. And I can see there's some houses, maybe something behind trees. I was like, what is this? And I made myself a promise. I want to go there and I want to do this story much, much better. And I want to photograph the people living there, who they are, what they do for a living, and just document the place. I didn't know how tiny Stavanger, Illinois was at the time. This was before Facebook. It was before Google Maps. So online maps, you might have someone, but I didn't find anyone. But a few years later, I found this on Google Maps. And I was like, what's Stavanger? Is it the area that's not showing here? Is it this area? And no, I know now it's just this. But that took me about 10 years to realize. So this, and this is the suburbs.
Right. I'm a suburban.
Yeah, she does it.
I'm right down there by 25.
Yeah, she
Down
lives
there?
down there.
See where the 25s is?
Yeah, well, right down there.
Down there.
Yeah. But I wanted to do this. And in 2007, I got a job in a big newspaper. And then I had every opportunity to do this. So I was like, yes. I talked to the reporter that wrote the article, and he gave me some phone numbers. And I was like, no, I hate calling someone. I'm not calling someone in the US and say, hey, I want to come over, can I take some photos? I don't. I have to meet people, talk to them, gain their trust. So I started sending emails. So I went onto Google and I found a church called Stavanger Lutheran Church. Sent them an email, and actually there was a pastor there that had a last name that was Chelta, which is just outside Stavanger. This is perfect, there is a local connection here. And they didn't respond.
Oh, boy.
I put the project away, and I then took it up again like 2 years later. I sent a new email, they didn't respond. And then I checked the address. This is Fergus Falls in Minnesota. So I then realized there was at least 3 churches in the US which Stavanger something. Probably there have been some more, at least 4, but I can find 3 now. There's also one in Iowa. So the reason why they didn't respond was probably because I wanted to go to Stavanger, Illinois. And obviously, this is not Illinois. I put the project away. And when Facebook came in 2007, you could choose your location. In Norway, you could not choose Stavanger, Norway as your location the first couple of years. But Stavanger, Illinois was a choice. So a lot of people in Stavanger, Norway, they actually chose Stavanger, Illinois as their home place. So for several years, I think it was 2 or 3 years, there was a lot of people living in Stavanger, Illinois on Facebook. I tried to get in touch with some of them, which I clearly could see was American names, but I didn't get any response. I think I sent to all the Meyer family members back then, and I didn't get any response. And in 2014, 9 years after I read this article, my boss came to me and he said, "What's your next project? You've been talking about the Stavanger project. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know how. I tried to get in touch with people, but I don't know how." And he said, "Put up a budget, go over there for a week, see who you meet, just start. You have to start somewhere." And I was like, "Wow, yes, I'm going to do that." And in the meantime, Stavanger Lutheran Church, the correct one, was on Facebook. So that I finally got my first contact person in Stavanger, Illinois, which was Miriam. So at least I had one I could talk to when I arrived. So exactly 10 years later, October 2015, I drove past Stavanger. And I was like, whoa, this was it. And I drove through it, and it took me 3 seconds. And then I started taking photos of the area. I started by just driving around, taking pictures of farmers, a lot of corn, farms. Yeah, not many people, because you will never see me go knocking on a door with my camera and say, "Hello, I want to take a photo." Never. It will never happen. But one day I parked at the church, and this man came to the car, knocked on the door, and was like, "May I help you, sir?" And I introduced myself, and he was, "Yeah, I'm Phil Peterson, I'm the pastor. Please come by my office tomorrow morning and we'll have a chat." So we did. And then I had 2 persons. And I was like, this is going very well. After 3 days of just driving around in the air, driving, I started to talk to people. And then I went over to Miriam's and her husband Ron. And then I suddenly had 4 people. And it was only Thursday, and I was going to be here until Monday. So, at Sunday, first to church, the first time I was there, I didn't realize how important for my work it was to start with the church, because everybody met there. So I could talk to them and ask them, "Can I come to your house one of the next days?" I went back home on the Monday, so I couldn't do that. But this is my first visit, 25th of October 2015. At that time, I thought I was going 2, 3 times over here, and then this project will be finished. I was wrong. It was a confirmation Sunday. The congregation wasn't that big at that time, and the average age was pretty high. That had changed a lot during those 9 years, but I was a bit worried when I visited the first time, because was not many people. And this was one of the first pictures I took of Robert Jackson, a true legend who's played the organ since 1944 or something.
What year did you start? I was about 16 when I started.
60, yeah. And now you're 97? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite some time. And I met Phil Peterson and his wife Nancy. I met Connie Wiley. I met Brittany Chapman, and Jody Chapman, Cora and Creighton, which at the time were the only children living there, and they still are, I think, right now. And I met Clara Haugen. She was 95 at the time. She could speak a little bit Norwegian, and she could, if you asked if she wanted some coffee, she could say just a little skvätt. And that's an expression we actually use, a skvätt. It's just a little bit coffee. Sadly, she passed away a short time after I visited Stavanger for the first time. I had photographed 10 or 11 out of 20 living there at the time, so I was super happy. Sadly, Ron passed away just 2 months later, and I lost my job just after that. So I had these like 250 pictures, no job, and I didn't know what to do with the project. So I had to ask myself, what now? What do I do? Because just two reasons. I didn't have the job that could let me do this, and two of the main characters, two of the people that really had the Norwegian ancestors and knew a little bit Norwegian, they passed away. So I had to choose. And at this time it was drop the project now or continue with it. It took me 2.5 years. I had to apply for funding, grants, because I wanted to do this. I said to myself, I'm going to do this, and I have a perfect opportunity after the week I've stayed in 2015. So I chose to stay on the project and got some money into late 2017, and in May 2018 I was back. And this was like a spring. It was a new opportunity. It was my project could grow further on, but I had to start over again. It wasn't the same people living there. I had to gain their trust once more to get into their lives and just be a fly on the wall and take photos of them. So I started the same way. I drove around, took the same pictures. I expanded the area a little bit. So I've been in Norway several times, but I started expanding the area a lot. And I started to explore, can I find some abandoned buildings? Can I find someone? Because there was a photographer doing this in another state, a Norwegian photographer, and he went into very old houses and found like old signs of Norwegian in old abandoned houses. I didn't go into houses, but I tried to find something about things that are not there, disappearing, worn down, but I didn't use it for anything. But I met the same people over and over again, went to the church, met Pastor Phil, and looked for the small details, the Norwegian names, the signs, everything I could use that could relate to Norway. And I found the Ufta. Somebody asked me, do you use that expression? And we don't.
No.
There's some people using it, some, but not much. We're not used to it. In our part of of Norway, it's not very common. So probably it's more used here than it is in Norway.
What does it mean, Larson?
Ufta, it's like, yeah.
Good grief.
Oh dear, yeah.
Frida.
Fida, yeah.
Bavars. My grandmother said that. Bavars. That was really bad.
So I did the same thing, just over again. And I found out that the church is important not only as a religious meeting place, which is obviously is, but as a social meeting place and a place where the Norwegian heritage are still being used, not in the services, but in some of the events. So for me it was important to use that. A lot of pictures here will be related to the church, and that's because it's important for the people in the area. I met some new people. Somebody will say they're not living in Stavanger. I've defined the 10 houses, so it's 10 houses in a church, but some say it's just 8 houses. It's not up to me.
Here's a Stavanger, she's looking a little perplexed over here.
No, there were the old, store was.
Yeah.
So that's Stavanger. That's how I remember
That's
where
my brother.
it was the old
Oh,
store.
that's your brother.
Yeah, brother.
Okay.
And I got to know the story about the sloopers. I knew the story before I came here, but now I really realized that there's a historical line going from Stavanger back in 1825 to New York, to Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
to Norway, and to Stavanger.
Yes.
And I already knew back then that in 2025, the city of Stavanger in Norway will celebrate its 900th anniversary and bicentennial with 200 years since the restoration left for New York. So I started to use that. I had that in my back head when I was working with this project from when I saw the book. But still looking for small signs, and when I left, I was at the same place. What I'm going to do now, because now it was continue with the Stavanger project, or expand even more to be about Norwegian heritage, culture, language. And I came back. I visited twice. This was my 3rd trip, and I was 100% certain that when I'm going in December, which will be my 4th, it will be my last trip. The Scandinavian Christmas party, the first Sunday of December, will be my last trip. We're still in 2018. I drove more around. I saw like 20 tractors on a field, and was like, what's this? And it's the Fisk family that gathers family and friends once a year. I stopped by this place. You may recognize from poster. I've taken this picture several times during the year. One is perfect, some are good. But a lot of the pictures I've taken several times. The same picture, exact same picture. Mr. Jackson, I have like 10 pictures, the same frame of him. But the first one I'm still using. So this trip, I looked into more of the community, how they keep together, and the church was very important here because it's a Sunday school, it's the congregation itself. At this time there was a rally day at the spot. There was a rally day, so everyone was like, we call it in Norwegian, we call it dugnad, which is voluntarily work. You don't use it, it's a special Norwegian word, but the meaning of it is the same everywhere. You're doing work voluntarily. So I kept looking for how the people got together, had fun, and like cooperation between people in this area. And I love that kind. I really do. And I started to look about what people are doing in this area. A lot of them are farmers. I got a video. I asked Miriam to say all the Norwegian words and expressions she could. So she tried. She had written them down. And some of them I had to ask something, but here's Miriam speaking Norwegian.
I am Miriam Hauge. I live in Stavanger, which is a little group of houses north of Seneca in central Illinois. I've lived here for 47 years. Tusen takk. Jusenaven går vi til Borg og spiser treffer portet. Jeg er så glad for julekveld, til da ble vi så spott. Det lyste stjernen som en sol. Snakke på norsk. A skvet. My mother-in-law always wanted a skvet more coffee. Gratulerer med dagen. Happy birthday. Lefse. Lefse and kringla and krumkaka. Kumla, you grate your potatoes and you add flour, and to lighten it we add oatmeal, and then you add your liquid. And my mother-in-law was always here and had to stir it. She had to use the spoon so she would know it was the right consistency before we would put it in the boiling ham juice. Gunter and Pinger, is that children? Girls and boys? Glade jul. Good. Jeg elsker deg, that's I love you. Var så snill. What is var så god? Is that talk and manga tusen talk? Good morgen and good kveld, good evening. Bekkelager, I'm sorry.
So she knows a little Norwegian. Yeah, it's still coming up with that. At this time I was thinking about, I need one picture. Stavanger back in Norway, we have like between 140 and 150,000 people living there. If you take the whole region, it's like 250 to 300,000. There was 20 in Stavanger, so I had the chance to get all the people living in Stavanger in one picture. So I started working for that. Back in 2018, I tried a lot. I couldn't make it in December. There was some people, maybe they didn't want to, or they were away. If you got like 15, 20 people, if 2, 3, 4 are away, its percentage of the total is pretty high. But now the direction started to stand out. I was looking at the whole area, about the Norwegian heritage and how it's kept alive for like between 150 and 200 years. But my main, like my center of interest was still Stavanger, but I started to look at the area. And then I was absolutely 100% sure that when I was going back in December 2018 for the Scandinavian Christmas party, it will be my final trip. So I came back, did the same photos, was snowing. I expanded the area a little bit more, and then it was this Christmas program. And I love it. I think it's a great, it's not much Scandinavian, it's Norwegian. It is. But I really liked it. And it's like cozy in a way. We have in Norway, we call it julefest, which is like Christmas tree parties. It reminds me of that. It was we gathered, we sang some Christmas songs, we had something to eat, maybe it was Christmas cookies or whatever, and we were walking around Christmas tree singing songs. It's not the same, but it's almost the same. The girls dress up in bunads, which, like I said yesterday, the bunad police in Norway will not recognize this as bunads. They're very strict about what's bunads and what you can wear to a bunad. Sunglasses.
Only if it's really sunny.
So, umbrella if it's raining. There's a lot of things. So, but it looks like a bunad. We would call it a like festivity outfit or something, but because there's a lot of this in Norway as well. But the bunad police would probably be very strict about it. So I wasn't during the preparations, and the church is the contrast between the first time I visited the church and to this, even on a normal Sunday, there was a lot more people there. And during this program, there wasn't an empty seat. And the children are singing a Norwegian Christmas song. So I recorded a video of it.
Good job.
The first thing when I came back to Norway, I showed that to my boys, and my youngest, his first reaction was, "At least they tried." And I was, it wasn't meant in a bad way. He was impressed, but I told him, yeah, but they don't know what they're singing. They just learn how the song goes and they sing it. And actually, in that song, there's a word that we don't use in Norwegian. Tida be Jesus, but ti. We would not use that. It's probably not been used in Norway the last 100 years. And that's one of the things that I realized is the language, the traditions that was exported 200 years ago. You have kept them and preserved them for all that time. While back in Norway, we have modernized and developed our language. We don't have the same traditions. as we did, we have, most of them are almost the same, but they're not quite the same. So when we're coming over here, it's like a person told me, it's like going in a time machine. And that's not even in a bad way. It's just different. It's a little bit of different direction. But the main thing from here is the same. The core of it is the same. But I really like this Christmas program. Lefsang kringla. We don't eat much kringla in Norway. A lot of people think you can go just around the corner and buy kringla. We can't. Lefsa is much easier to get. Depends on where you're from in Norway, because you get different lefsa traditions and different lefsas. So the first time I tasted kringla was in New York. And yeah, it tastes good, and you have to take one. But I didn't get a group photo. And on my way back home, I was told that, have you tasted the kumla? And I was like, what did you just say? Yeah, there's a couple of restaurants in the area that serve kumla. And the one in New York has the first Tuesday of the month during the winter season. We have kumla Thursday in Norway, but here it's kumla Tuesday. But we have taco Friday.
And
We
you
have
say
taco-
taco Friday.
It was Thursday in Lawrence.
It was Thursday.
Yeah, and they served 700 dinners at the truck stop of Kuma.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
me neither. And then I went to New York. They thought I was Swedish because I didn't eat kumla. But I thought, okay, I'll have to go up to New York because this is a Norwegian tradition. So on the way, I visited Scott with his cap, said hello to Pastor Phil, and then went up to New York Country Kitchen. And at this point, I was going home for the last time. Or I thought I was going back for the last time. But when I was there, and the kumla, we don't use it like this way. The kumlas are almost the same. We don't use ham. We use lamb, salted meat, and sausages. And we don't have applesauce. We use what is called rutabaga.
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 Potatoes, yeah.
Yes. It's like mashed rutabaga, which is really good.
Yes.
And we don't use sour cream. But the kumlas are the same. It's made in the same way. And then mentor who made the kumla, he told me you should go back in mid-February. And I was, why? And he said, we serve 400 to 600 people with kumla in one day, and we make about 1,800 kumlas. I didn't believe him. And he said, yes, we're having it out in the fire station, so there will be a lot of people. You should really come. And I was like, okay. I don't have the money, but I can see what I can do. Because I already planned a trip in March, 2 weeks later, because I wanted a group picture. And that was the last picture in the project was the group picture. So I had to come back for the 34th Kumla dinner in 2019. I visited Ferndale Historic Association. I met some new people. And all the people doing dugnad and making all the kumlas. And it turned out that the father of these two No, the mother learned him to make kumla. He had learned it from the Norwegian housewives. So he's one of them keeping the Norwegian traditions alive, but he's not Norwegian. And then over 400 people showed up and had kumla. And this was so interesting that I went to my editor and said, "Do you want a story about 400 Americans eating kumla?" And he was like, "Yes, I do." So they made me made an extra article about just about this kumla dinner. I made a video for that article. It's me speaking Norwegian, but you will understand the people that I've interviewed. So I'm going to show it to you.
Hva er det som får over 400 mennesker til å stå i kø for å spise kumla? For vi er ikke i Norge, men midt på bondelandet i USA. Halvannen time utenfor Chicago ligger den lille byen New York, en rolig by med rundt 1300 innbyggere. Denne lørdagen kommer folk langveisfra for å spise kumla. Og det er ikke bare norske amerikanere som kommer.
No, there's all kinds of, there's even Swedes and
På 2 dager har dugnadsgjengen i Ferndale Historic Association jobbet med å skrelle og mose flere hundre kilo poteter. Og de har laget tilsvarende mange kumler som serveres til kumlehungrige amerikanere.
In total, we serve about between 500 and 600 meals, so everyone gets 2 to 3. Some people eat more than that.
Selve kumla er nokså lik den norske varianten, men tilbehøret er ganske annerledes.
and we serve kumla and ham, applesauce, sour cream.
Pål Matre er en av ildsjelene bak kumlefesten og har vært med i over 30 år.
We've been doing it, this is our 34th year. It's a fundraiser that we have for our museum. We have four buildings and that's our only one of our money makers.
Og det er ikke mange kumlemiddager Lowell har gått glipp av.
Have I missed this one? Both the wife and I had flu one year and we didn't get to it, so.
I was here for like 2 days on that trip. Just coming here for kumla dinner, went to the church, and then went back home afterwards. But I was going back. It was just 2 weeks until I was back, and then I had some new people, which I didn't meet before, because at the kumla dinner, one woman came up to me and said, "You see that lady in the red coat? You should talk to her, and you should visit her home." And I was like, "Okay." I went over to talk to her, introduced myself, and she was, "Yeah, you can come to my house when you're coming back in 2 weeks." So I went to her house, and she got a lot of Norwegian souvenirs. Her house is all over Norwegian. So Marge Bow lives in Ottawa, and there was Norwegian things everywhere. And of course Lifta. And she also got a bunad. Probably the bunad police will not recognize this one as well, but she had the bunad. So I talked to her, and I got to see her lovely house with all the Norwegian stuff in it. And I met Dave at the North Museum. It wasn't open at the time, but I got him to open it to me. I didn't get the group photo at that time either. And I had run out of money. This was my 6th, 7th trip to the area. And it was 2019. and I didn't know what to do. So I made fundraiser, and some of my friends bought some of the photographs before the project was finished, but I'd chosen some of them they could buy, and I had enough for one more trip in November. And my only goal was to get that group photo, because I had everything I wanted in the project. This was late November. The weather forecast was a lot of snow coming the Monday. There was almost nobody in the church on the Sunday, because everyone were out on the fields trying to get the corn in before the snow. And the snow came on the Monday, just as predicted. But I didn't get a group photo.
I'm supposed to keep coming back.
But I took some of the photographs that I took before, and I got this one. On my way out of Stavanger, I was 100% sure this is my final visit. I was going to the airport, driving east out of Stavanger, and I just stopped, went out of the car, and took this photo. And I was thinking, I didn't get a good photo, but this is a perfect, it's a perfect end of the story. Me going home out of the area I had visited a lot of times. When I get back home, I started to write the article I wanted. So I sat down, wrote a pretty big article, and I went to my editor and my former boss, and I said, okay, I think I got this. Will you help me sort and pick out the photographs you want to print? And he said, sure, how many did you got? And I was like, 3,500. So I had to narrow it down, and I picked out 1,000 first, then I picked up 200, and then 100, and then down to 50, and then down to 20. That was kill your darlings. But they were very satisfied. So they printed the article over 16 pages in their magazine. And 2 or 3 weeks later, they had 6 pages with a cum laude dinner as well. So there were almost, it was over 20 pages about this area in a short period of time in 2020. And I started to think about, okay, I want to show this story all over Norway. So I made a photo exhibition for Western Norway Emigration Center. That's not that. This is from the harbor of Stavanger, and this is the replica of Restoration, the ship that sailed in 1825. But the interest, I didn't get many places to have the exhibition. I got this outside Bergen, on board Restoration, and on the small island I come from, some of the pictures were exhibited just for a weekend. And then I had to start thinking about 2025, because in my back head, the idea of an outdoor exhibition in Stavanger, telling the story about the different Stavanger here. I had this in mind all the time. And now I had to do whatever I needed to get that happening. But doing this project is like 99% no and 1% yes. So the city of Stavanger first, they said no, it's not interested. We're not interested in this. It's not. They didn't see the story as I did. And in the meantime, I had some visitors from the area. So I had Kathy and Monica Anderson, and I had Gail and her sister and daughter Jennifer last year, November. Yeah. So some people coming to the area has visited the ship, the restoration. It's possible. It's just outside Stavanger, so you can get on board if you want to. It was a little bit difficult at that time because, as you can see, it's far out from the. So you have to climb on this very narrow. And last year I had my family with me visiting the church during Easter. The place that I heard a lot about, but never visited. And their reaction was the same as me. This was small. This was tiny. And they're used to the small island I come from with like 500 people, and here's like 20. But finally, the city of Stavanger last fall, I cooperated with restoration and I got a yes. This looks interesting. We want you to have the exhibition outdoors in Stavanger next year. So they gave me some money to finalize the project, like update it, and I went back in November last year for the Christmas program. I didn't try to get the group photo, but I had some money to like go back, and when Pastor Phil retired 2.5 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago maybe, I went back. And after church, I got the group photo.
Good job.
So it took me like 10 travels to the area. So now this exhibition will be here this weekend. It will be in Vesterheim, Victoria, from November until February. That's quite a long time. Hopefully a lot of people will have a look at it there. It will be in Norway House in Minneapolis sometime next year. We don't know yet when. They're talking about around 6th of May or during the summertime. And my ultimate goal is to have it at the Siemens Church. They have a gallery in New York, opening the same day as Restoration sails into New York, October 9th, Leif Erikson Day next year. We have had some positive talks. That's all I can say, but they haven't decided what to do next year. I'm going to get in touch with them the next week and show them what we did here, and hopefully they will see the same value of this as I did. Because, like I said, this is a historical line which it aligns with the story of restoration.
Mm-hmm.
This is the modern story of the area the sloopers settled. So there's a connection here, and hopefully they will see the same way. And there will be an outdoor exhibition both in July and in October in Stavanger. So the picture I took from here is not here, but it will be in the outdoor exhibition in Stavanger. And I know some of you have said you're going to be there
I'm gonna be there.
in July, so and I will be there as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Are you coming here next year in October when we have our big celebration here?
I probably have to go to New York, and we'll prioritize New York, but we'll see.
That's why we did it a week earlier,
Yeah.
just so that we could do ours and then go to New York also.
Every every trip for me costs about $2,000.
Right.
If I'm staying 2 nights or 5 nights, it's
Right.
almost the same because the flights are. So right now I have the money for going to Decorah and Minneapolis, and I'm not quite sure how to do it.
More
with New
people
York.
will, probably more people will see it, but the program here, you might get Sons of Norway members from other states coming to the
Yeah.
weekend. We don't know how many we'll get, but I'm sure that the Cora one will be have you been there before?
Yeah, I visited
Yeah,
in November.
that's a great, both of those places are wonderful for your exhibit.
I didn't get any response from Norway House. I got from Westerheim. So I decided to go to Minneapolis and meet up and talk to them. And so I did, and then I drove through Decorah on my way here
Yeah,
and talked to them. So
it was a good plan, Larson.
so
Lars, do you have a website that lists, where different events are going to be occurring?
yes, I for the American tour, it's A Dying Norway in a Living America.com. It's on the back side of the booklet. You can see it. There's a menu called The Story. It says there, and I will update it as I know more about dates. Yeah. And there's a little bit about what I've told you now about the story and why I did it, just a bit shorter.
I have a good friend up in Rockford that she's from Decorah, and we're the 2 Norwegians in our group.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Rockford, it's a Swedish town, so I'm kind of stand out like a sore thumb.
That's it.
No,
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
So much.